I've had a chat with a few people, and what I've decided to do, and what I think would be best, is if I just show you a few bits of the texturing, and then really just let you go through and use what you've learned from the few small sections to finish it off the rest of the gun. I think if I don't do that, it's probably going to end up being a very, very long texturing tutorial because I'm pretty slow at texturing, and I think it's probably the best thing to do. So I'm going to start off by texturing the clip, which is just here. I'll go on to texture the top slide, and then I'll do another tutorial on these plastic. I might probably do the top slide and this bit separately. So I'm just going to start, really. First thing I'm going to do is just darken everything up. So I'm going to select my adjustment layers, brightness, contrast, and I'm going to take the brightness down until I'm happy with it, really. It looks like 25 is quite nice. In the guide, it's a nice dark metal there. Right, there's a couple of ways to do this, and this is the way I prefer to do it. Some people, when texturing, they prefer to have a couple of layers. One which will have a dark colour for doing the low lights, and one with whites which is for the highlights. I personally like to work like that on more organic stuff than metals, and I find for metals that I prefer to use the dodge and burn tools. I think it brings out the actual base texture you've created a lot more, rather than taking away the details. As you know, covering it up with whites and blacks would take away the details you have there. So what I'm going to do is I've made a selection around what the piece I want to texture. I've selected my base layer. I'm going to copy and paste. You're going to do the work on this, what you've just copied and pasted, and you're going to keep the base layer perfectly clean as the base layer. So if you do make any errors, or you find yourself having any problems, you just copy and paste out the base layer again. It's sort of a backup in case things go wrong. So I've copied and pasted that. I'm going to create a new box. I'm going to call it clip. This layer here darkens everything above it, or below it, I'm sorry. So I'm going to do one above it, and I'm just going to call that details. In this details folder, I'm going to put sort of all these little sections here that I've done. You know, these little knobbly bits and stuff, just probably a bit easier. Right. So I'm going to start off is just by doing some dark areas and light areas. So I'm going to select my burn tool. I've got the exposure on 10, and I've got a nice soft brush. My brush settings, I don't have anything on at the moment. So my first bit of shadow, I'm just going to want along the bottom here, where the clip meets this plastic area. Just doing a few strokes here and there. Button there. I'm then just going to select the dodge tool. I've got it on highlights, and again I'm going to put the exposure on about 5. Shortcut wise, I'll try and explain them as I go along. Basically 1 to 0 changes your exposure or your opacity accordingly. So 1's 10, 2's 20, all the way up to 100, which is 0. If you press them a bit quicker, you can put more specific numbers in, so 45 or whatever. And I'm just going to do 0.5 to get exposure down to 5. Just going to have a look at my brushes. Scattering there. And I'm just going to just do very general brightness. This is just sort of adds a little bit of interest. There isn't any specific sort of details getting highlighted here. It just creates a slight gradient. Next thing I want to do is just start working on the highlight. This section here is curved, and the light would really be reflecting off this main curve here. I'll put my exposure up to 20. I've got the range on highlights, and what I would personally like to do is put a touch of scattering on. So you're just going to press the brush tab here, tick the scattering, and under scatter we just want to put it up a touch. I think it just adds a little bit of interest. So what the idea is, I'm going to put the brush size up to about 60, 70, and I'm going to hold down shift. Get me paintbrushed out quick. If you hold down shift, it basically creates a straight line. What you can also do is hold down shift and touch in one spot and then touch another, and it'll create a straight line between those 2 points. What else is handy, which I'll show you quickly, is the size jitter. The size jitter, I'm just going to put it on pen pressure as I'm using a tablet, is basically the brush size changes dependent on how hard I press down on my tablet. So as you can see, so what I like to do sometimes is hold down shift, and at point A I'll press hard, point B I won't press so hard. Oh. And as you can see, the line changes thickness depending on how hard I press on the 2 points. They come in really handy for doing scratches and stuff, I find, but that's for a bit later. So what I'm going to do, hold down shift, and I'm going to drag down, up. So I've done 2 passes there. First down and then up, and I'm going to reduce the brush size to 50. And then down, up. I'm also just going to hide this quickly. And I'm going to reduce the brush size another couple of times, and down, up again, and again another couple of times. As you can see, it sort of creates that gradient where it's not so shiny here, and as it comes towards the middle where you've been using the thinner brushes, it's created a stronger white and the stronger highlight. So that is the main highlight done. The next areas that we're going to have quite a strong highlight are going to be around the edges here and up here, down here. The best way I find to do highlights is to basically work with a lot of selections. There's a lot of interesting selection tools, but I'm just going to use the rectangular marquee, and I'm going to select around here. Right. There we go. And I'm going to do Control H to hide. I'm just going to hide this top grid. Right, what I like to do is, for doing these sort of highlights, I like to try and work with the fall off of the brush. So as you can see, this is sort of the brush, it fades as it goes towards the outside, and it's strongest in the middle. It's creating the colour according to a gradient. So if you have a look here, this sort of faded area will only sort of put a certain amount of exposure down, a weaker exposure, and the black is a stronger exposure, creating the sort of softness. What I like to do is basically use that gradient to create the highlights. See, I'm quite... Oh, and also along with the scattering as well. So, as you can see, I've got my brush a little way away from the marching ants, as I like to call them, over here. And what creates the highlight is the scattering that I've created, and also... So I've just got to try and get it in the right place. The scattering and the gradient. I'm going to put my brush down to about size 3. I'm going to do a single pass down, and so I just go a quick squiggle to find where my selection is. There we go. And what you'll also notice is that the actual scattering that I've put on, it helps to create a varied line. Oh, my exposures are very, very high. You see how there's little light dots and darker dots, etc. And it just creates a bit of variation, and variation makes things a bit more interesting. So that's the highlights there. I'm then going to get up my guide again, Control H to unhide there, and I'm just going to make my second selection. It's going to be just along here. In fact, I'll do it up to here. Guide again, Control H to hide, and same again using the gradient. So right now I've got a size 5 brush. I do one pass with the gradient with the brush sort of halfway over, so you get quite a bit of gradient halfway over the selection there. And I'm going to smash it down to sort of 2 and get a... See, this is why I don't want to do too many texturing tutorials, because I'm pretty damn slow. So okay, yeah, I've done one pass with a slightly larger brush where the fall off will be more, and then I reduce the brush size to create this sort of sharper highlight. Unhide, and lastly I just want to create a highlight across the top of the weapon here. So size 3. The best thing to do is to remember what brush sizes you're using. It means your work's a lot more precise. Oh, of course I've got to do, so I was using 3 or a 4. One pass. Put the brush size down, and again to create that sharper 1 pixel highlight. And it's those sort of sharper 1 pixel highlights and these strong highlights on the edges that make a metal really come out and look like a metal. Next thing we want to do is we start to add in some of these details. And what I've done here is I've selected my base layer again, change this to Eclipse Marquee tool, and what I'm going to do is click and drag and make a selection. And what you'll notice is that it's not a perfect circle, so I'm going to hold down Alt, which makes the creation slightly different. I'm also going to hold down Shift, which turns it into a perfect circle rather than this sort of ellipsy shape. I'm just going to make a quick selection on the base layer. I'm going to move this about and get this about in the right position. What's it whinging at? The target layer is hidden. Okay. Alright, I'm going to do Control C on the base layer, paste it in again, and I'm going to drag this up above this adjustment layer into the details layer. Right. Now what I'm going to do is, we want this a slightly brighter metal, don't we? So I'm just going to do a couple of passes. With the dodge tool there. Just sort of make it a little more interesting. And then I'm going to get the burn tool out. I'm just going to work in the shadow around the top here. Oh, I'm going to put the exposure on around 20. And again, probably not coming out as best as it could do, but Also notice that it's got a little bit of a black spot on. So I'm just going to make another little selection with the marquee tool. Holding down the shift and control again, and I'm just going to burn it till it gets nice and dark. Right, I'm going to hold down control, and then I'm going to click on the layer. That will just select what's on the layer. I'm going to do control shift I to select the inverse, and I'm going to go back to. Actually, no, it's probably not the best of ways to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blending option of bevel and emboss. I'm going to put the highlight there so it's the same as the highlight I've already painted on. And I want inner bevel, and I want this one, chisel hard. Size 1 pixel. I want to soften them. Generally, with all this sort of stuff, I just fiddle about for a while until I sort of get something I want. Basically, what's going on is I want to put a highlight around here to show that this little section that I've just created is embossed into the main metal, because at the moment it just looks like it's sitting there, and I'm just sort of trying to figure out the best way of doing it. I think I may well just have to sit and paint it on. Texturing really isn't my forte, that's for sure. That one. Okay, so basically all I've done is selected the layer, selected the inverse, and I'm just sort of painting a highlight, which isn't coming out very nice. But because this section hit around here is so strong and white, it's not coming out very well. So I fiddle with the levels. I was going to adjust the levels. Oh, cancel Control L. Oh, I need this shortcut. So what I'm going to do is just hopefully. Yeah, no, it's not working too well. Have a look at it. Yeah, it's not doing too bad. D. Probably a little bit too big as well, actually. I'm going to select Control T. I'm going to hold down Shift to make this a bit uniform scale. I'm just going to scale it down a touch. Right, I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to drag it over. Holding down Alt and having a selection means you don't create a new layer. So if I drag this down, it's created a new layer. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is select and hit move, and then hold down Shift and move it, and that will make sure you don't create a new layer. I do want 20 of these, right? Sure, everyone else will be a bit more accurate than this. I just want to try and get this done as quick as possible. Clearly not enough to say you're meant to have 8, or no, 10 I think you want. 20 round magazine? Yeah, it will do. Right, next thing I want to do is open up the reference pictures. Images. thumbnails. So peep at this one. So yeah, we've got these little notches here. Also here, these ones are a little silvery colour. So again, as we did before, we're going to make a selection on our base layer, holding down Control, Alt and Shift. Get about the right size. Copy, paste, drag it up here. If you want to rename these, I don't know, clip 1, clip 2, clip base. Alright, and again we just really want to get our dodge tool and just lighten it up. I'm going to just have a quick look what it will look like with a bevel and emboss. Not quite what I want, really. Right, let's try doing this real dark a lot around the edges. That would do. So again, just holding down Alt, dragging a couple of these down. Say I'm not being okay. I'm just because of the way I copied them, I created new layers. So I'm just going to select the top one, hit Control E a couple of times, and combine them into one. Go back to my base layer there. Just going to add a little bit of a highlight around the edge. Coming out too well. I think it's really just because I'm working on such a small texture. Oh, crap. I was painting on the wrong layer. There we go. It's a bit better. God, this is why I need to practice texturing more myself. Top one looks good. That would do. Right, let's have a quick peep at this one. Right, so just want to start adding some of the muck and grime now, really. First of all, we've got oh, what's that doing down there? Right, so we created all these layers a little while ago. We've got speckle, random, scratches, and damage. Speckle, we just want to get our paintbrush tool. I've got this set of grunge brushes here, which I'll try and bung into the tutorials. into the zip file. There's this one here, size 747, and if we look at the brush, it's basically just a load of little dibby dabby dots everywhere. What we're just going to do is just select, holding down Control, or just clip area. Bang, so it's just made the selection there. I'm just going to hide with Control H, and I'm just going to slam a speckle down. And all these little dots just sort of add a little bit of extra interest. If you think they're a little bit too bright, you just put the opacity down. So I'm going to bung it down to about 50. That should do. Right, random is just random little splotches of stuff as well. Again, just another layer just to add interest. So again, with all these grunge brushes, there's all these little funny slimy marks and just junk really. Screen basically will display white but not black, but that's cool. I think screen basically lights up what's underneath, kind of like a dodge or burn. So it's kind of in a sense, dodging what's underneath, but without. We have a lot more control over it because it's in a separate layer, so we can change the opacity and all the fill and all that sort of stuff. So I quite like this brush. I'm going to just put a big splodge of white there, and I'll do one sort of around here as well. What I'm going to do is just bung the opacity right down to around 10, but fill down to about 50. You want to try and be subtle with this. As I said before, you want it only just to show as we have it round. You know, really have a good fiddle about. You don't want it to be the detail on the clip. You don't want it to be the thing that stands out. You just want it to sort of just add that little extra interest. Scratches. This is a fun one. What we want to do is a 1 pixel solid brush. We just want to go into the brush options. I like to put a little touch of scattering on, make sure it's real low. See how the brush seems to jump about a little touch. I'm also going to put shape dynamics on, and I'm going to put the size jitter to pen pressure. So if we touch real lightly, not much happens at all. Make sure on the scratches layer. And a little touch more, probably around to a 50 or so. So now what you want to do is just real lightly on your tablet, you just want to start adding in some, change layer, start adding in some scratches. Coming up rather. Yeah, the scattering, annoying, the scattering sort of making it a little, pushing the size of the brush up a bit, so I'm going to turn that off for now and just do it without the scattering. I think normally I work on a slightly larger texture, so it comes out a lot more, but this being 1024, right, so just chuck it around a bit really. Put in some scratches where you think they were sharp most. You got the if you hold down Shift, press hard, and then press lightly, you sort of create some pretty cool scratches as well. Right, we don't really want the scratches on the inside here, so I'm going to get my little rubber out. I'm going to put that back up to the top. Just get rid of that. There you go. Right. Next thing we want to do is start adding in some of the sort of harder wear and tear funny, I had the scattering on these ones and the brush size real low, and it seemed to come out quite nice. Yeah, it's working a few more scratches. Okay, so for the wear and tear, I'm just going to bung it in this damage layer. And again, I've got a 2-pixel brush. I'm going to put on scattering again, shape dynamics. I'm also going to put on an opacity jitter. And the opacity jitter changes the opacity dependent on the pen pressure. Put the scattering up a little touch more. They've got a really bit of crazy brush. And the areas that would get damaged, the corners and things, you just want to start just painting on some damage, really. Just go a bit wild. Just flick between a slightly smaller brush and a slightly larger one. And just go wild, really. What's good about having this in a separate layer, this sort of work, not only you can edit it a lot easier, but you can also use these layers to help create your specular maps later. I mean, these are the areas we're colouring now, are basically the areas that are going to be the shiny areas. I'm going to just pause the video there for a minute, just while I just touch some stuff up. Didn't really have anything more to say, so I just carried on working into the redid some of the scratches and just worked on the damage some more. Another way I quite like to do damage, just copy this layer, rub it out, is I'll create a custom brush. So file new, say width 100, height 100. In this window I'll just draw a little black image of what I want my brush to look like. So, a bit of mess here. Spiky bits coming out. Like so. And then I'll hit edit and define brush preset. You can give it a name if you want. Grunge. Slam OK. No. It will automatically select that brush, but it will be also at the very bottom of your brushes down here. Right, that looks pretty damn plain. It just does the same image over and over again. What you want to do is go into some of the brush settings and make it a bit more interesting. So you want brush dynamics, we want the angle jitter. The angle jitter will change the direction the image is facing. As you can see, it's sort of rotating round. Can also have the size jitter, round jitter, or can sort of squish and stretch the shape of the brush. And scattering makes it shoot all over the place, as we've seen before. Count is how many there are, so I'm going to put the count down. I'm going to put the scatter up. I'm going to turn the pen pressure off. Can also change the spacing. So there we go. But what we're going to do is very similar to using the fall off as we did before. We'll make a selection along here, and as I paint the brush over here, you can see it down the edge there, it picks up little splotches of colour. So I'm going to use that technique just to create odds and ends of grunge. Like so. Just odd little scratches, odds and ends. Then Control Shift I and just do the same down that edge. I'm sure someone who actually knows a bit about texturing will probably make some better use of this technique than me. There we go. In fact, I may actually put down the brightness a bit, probably put it into a bit grey more than a white. Right, the last thing you want to do, once you've got most of it done, is really just have a bit of an edit. A lot of the time your sort of brightness and darkness here won't be 100% perfect, and you know, as you start to put colour on here, well, not necessarily colour but detail on here, you'll realise that your overlay textures aren't quite as prominent as they look to begin with. So you want to have a go in and have a good feel with, have a good play around with your overlay textures. Generally you just want to sort of bring them out a touch more. Like so. But yeah, that's just really down to personal taste more than anything. Just have a fiddle about and see what you come up with. Just want to I'm going to Control U. I'm just going to change the lightness of these a little bit. I really do want them quite bright, but I think they'll do really. Right, I'm going to start max up quickly. We'll have a look at this texture. Oh yeah, to say what I was saying, a lot of the time you'll find that the highlights and lowlights you've done on, once you've started to put on all the scratches and stuff, aren't quite as prominent as you first thought, much like with these overlay textures. So what you want to do is, again, you want to add a second adjustment layer, but you want to do one with levels. And what this levels does is a bit like contrast. You can bring together the darks and lights, but it's a bit more customizable. As you've got like, the darknesses, the brights, and the in-betweens. So as you pull that, it brings the makes the darks a bit darker. Oh, excuse me. Bring the lights a bit lighter. That's what we want to do. This is something you want to do at the end, but I'll do it now. Right. If I select this layer and then put the adjustment layer on, levels. Oh. Okay, a bit differently. I thought it did something else. Right. I'll make a selection of here. Go into my mask, and I'm going to fill everything that I don't want to be affected black, I think. I want it white. There we go. So it's only affecting that white area, but at the end of it, you're going to want to do the whole lot. So you just want to, again, have a fiddle about. All personal preference. A lot of the time you don't want to make too many adjustments, but it's always a good idea to make a few adjustments. There we go. We just want to do one final overlay texture with some browns and blues on. Just going to select a blended brush. These overlay textures are basically what it would be like a slight reflection. It seems the general consensus with this sort of stuff is you have blue towards the top, which is basically reflecting the sky, like so, and I've just used this little blue here. It seems to work quite well. And then this brown here I quite like, or this sort of brown, which is reflecting more of the floor, like so. I'm going to put him on overlay and just churn him right down. Cool. Again, it just adds a little extra colour variation and all that jibber jabber. So just chuck it right down until it's barely visible. Again, trying to be nice and subtle with the textures. I'll save as, I think I want to save this as Glock 2. Yes, please. Alright, just need to open up my Glock in here. Any work? No. Tutorials. Modelling. No, don't want that. Weapon. Glock. Right, so what we're going to do is just press M. I'm going to select one of our material IDs. Actually, let me clear this one in case you don't know how to get textures on. Yes. Right, I'm going to hit this little box here, which allows us to choose textures, and we want a bitmap. Yes, please. And then in this dialog box, we just want to go through and select our texture. You can open PSDs up in here, which is cool. But with PSDs, it likes to chug a little while. Okay. I'm just going to drag and drop our texture on here, and we want to click this little show map in viewport, otherwise we get this grey image. Close it. Right. What you'll notice is that the clip is going to be slightly warped, and that's where I've stretched it up. See, these circles are not quite perfectly round, but it never renders out sort of full resolution or anything, but no, I think that will do. I guess next tutorial I'll just start work on the top slide, I think. Good luck.